To start with, how are alerts monitored? Alerts are monitored through the alert page or alert tab, and I can resize this to make it nice and neat. And when I click on all alerts, everything that has triggered for the last basically 30 events will appear on my screen. And you can see that now, quite simply put, we have a vehicle traveling between Cape Town and what looks like East London, or PE, and they are traveling quite fast and are triggering a lot of speeding events. Now, the point I was making earlier is we can pick up immediately. We've got one vehicle triggering a whole bunch of events on a national highway. And if I dive in, I can immediately see where on the highway this particular vehicle is doing their speeding. Now, this is obviously a little bit trickier to see, so I'm going to jump to a different alert to show you. For example, here, if we wanted to see a trend for speeding above a certain value, I would see there I've got 3 vehicles all speeding in the same part of the road. So we now know this section of road is clearly where people feel they can pretend they are Formula One drivers. And what you're able to do now is see this is an area of interest, build a geofence in that area, and trigger when one of those vehicles are entering that area, knowing full well that you can then report on it and see how many times vehicles enter that. Get a feeling for, is this happening commonly, isn't it? So just to guide you, you can log in on your alert page, pick up some trends from identifying where things are happening regularly. This can be applied to things like if you're worried about fuel theft and the fuel values dropping on a vehicle, speeding, entering no-go zones that people shouldn't be, and so forth. So the map helps you identify areas of interest. We can monitor the alert. Now, I've chosen a specific alert. I've chosen the recent alerts, and we can go and we can change the date. We can have a look and see yesterday there were a few people in the same road, on the same road, doing excessive speed, and we can have a look over time. Great, there's nothing happening. We can also go back 30 days. Notice the date is grayed out on the 16th or 15th of June, and on the 16th of June, there is no data. So we can look at alerts going back 30 days, and we're able to immediately identify which alert, if we wanted to do all, or we can go into a specific alert. So we can monitor these, we can keep a tab on them and see what's going on. If you would like a siren to sound when an alert goes off, if you think they're coming through thick and fast, we have a siren badge by default off, but you can enable the sound. If you would like to consider running a control room or have a client running a control room and somebody is sitting monitoring this system, you're able to show acknowledged alerts or remove them from the list. And what that means is when a control room staff member sees an alert, they would be able to click on it, see it on the map, and they can write a comment in it, or they can acknowledge it. I'm going to acknowledge this alert. Now, obviously, create a nice description for the acknowledgement. You know, I called the driver, there was no issue, this particular vehicle did not have a problem, or whatever the case is, write in the acknowledgement. It will then appear, it will tell me who acknowledged it, what time they acknowledged it, and the comment. And then as we go through the alerts, we can do the same. And ultimately, if we show the acknowledged and we remove the acknowledged, they will disappear from our queue. Okay, and so the control room staff get used to the idea that when they acknowledge an alert, it disappears from the queue and they don't have to deal with every single view of every single alert, and this queue will get smaller and smaller. I will show you how, after acknowledging a report or an alert, how this is useful when you report on it. Now, bearing in mind, if you have the staff doing this when you run the report, that becomes useful to see who's done the acknowledgement, when and what they said, and how many have gone unacknowledged. So that is just a quick snap view of the alert page. Now I'd like to show you how we build alerts and some tricks and hints with this. So prior to our release the other day, all alerts were added and developed and managed and edited in this particular section under the administration. Now we can do it in the alert section by clicking the plus button on alerts, and we can build our alert directly in the alert page. So let's go through some useful hints. The first one is the name of the alert. Now, if I were to create an alert called speeding, and I then add in my event and I close that, I have now given a description which is very generic to a customer. So it is useful to add a good description on the alert so that it makes sense, that at the end of the day, when the customer gets the alert, because if you notify them, they need to know, what am I dealing with? Not just speeding or a specific event like harsh braking, but why is it relevant? And I'll show you why this ties into what I said earlier about the event and the rule. So we can assign that to a cost center. If this alert is assigned to a cost center, what that means is if I assign it to the parent or the highest level, all vehicles underneath that will trigger it. If I assign it at a lower level, only those vehicles in that cost center and those users will see the alert. So we can restrict who and what triggers, well, what triggers the alert and who sees the alert. We can then assign it a priority. So bearing in mind that the priority is linked to a number of things. Number one is when this goes to the person involved who's notified, do they panic or do they just go, oh, everything's okay, no problem? So you choose your priority based on that factor and also whether you're reporting it on it. And thirdly is how you've set up your users to receive alerts, and we'll go into that. So we've chosen this, let's put it as a low priority. And now we choose which vehicle or asset will trigger this event. So we can go in here and we can choose any vehicle, which is a generic across the board, or we can go in and choose a specific vehicle. Now we know that Toyota is driving along the south coast of South Africa. We could build an alert and we could build a zone around Cape Town or the depot to say, when you're here, come and see me because you've been speeding all along the garden route, as an example. So you can be very specific or very generic. Now we choose the event. And simply put, you can choose any of the list that you see in the dropdown. And I say this again, you can choose anything that you see. And when I open something like that, I can choose the video. But if that event is not available on my vehicles, if I choose something like a callback request event, but none of my devices support the callback request, if I haven't set up an idle time on my vehicles and I choose excessive idle, it will never trigger the alert. So the first thing to know is, what do my devices support in terms of events, which is in our configuration documentation? And the second thing is, what have I configured the software to create and generate events? So here we could put in excessive idle and it may not trigger. Okay, so I will add, if my vehicles enter the group of locations called customer groups. So now I've made a very specific alert. Now I can even go a step further and say, I'm only interested to know if my vehicles enter that customer group between the hours of whatever time and whatever time on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And I might say, okay, if my vehicles enter a customer zone between 4 and 5, I want to know about it, because maybe they shouldn't be doing that. I've just thought that maybe my drivers shouldn't be entering the customer zone between that time, because they should have left the customers by that time. And if somebody's going back, there is a nefarious reason, and I would like to know about it. We may then, because of that, change that back to high and say, okay, now I've got a very specific alert. And you will notice I can keep adding the ands. So I can add, if they enter the zone and they are speeding, I can enter the zone and say, if the cargo door is open, or the driver is so-and-so. Okay, any driver or a specific driver. So we can get very, very specific with our alert. This is why I say the first reason we build an alert is to say to somebody, do something about what you've just received. So you can be very generic or very specific. And this is how powerful the tool is. Now, if I go on and I say, oh, I only want to know when they enter this group, between these hours and the ignition is off, for example, this will never trigger, because the ignition by definition has to be on for the vehicle to be driving to enter that particular customer group. The only way this would potentially work is if my driver has tagged, is sitting holding the tag, the vehicle's being towed, and it goes into the customer zone. So it's very unlikely I'm going to get one line of telemetry with all of these firing at the same time. If I remove that, it will definitely work if I have drivers tagging. If I don't have any driver tags, this will never fire. And now that will fire, no problem, as long as that rule is met for that event. So be specific, be generic, decide how you want to build your alerts, give it the appropriate priority, and then add whom you would like to notify. When it comes to the notification, you can always add yourself, or you can add users in the client with a specific role. So if you've created a user role in the client, you can add them to this alert as a group. Alternatively, you can drop open and add specific users in that client to the alert. So we go and we will add me. My name is distributor user, and I will be notified when this alert fires. So we've created a high alert, a time, and a notification. So I'm actually going to rename mine number 2 because I have created one. Once I save this and finish it, it will appear automatically in my list below. There it is. There's the other one I created, which is why I gave this the number 2. And there is my alert, and nothing has fired yet. Now, for those of you who are not aware or haven't played with the new alert engine in the alerts tab, if I would like to edit this alert, I go up to the 3 red dots and I click edit. and it will appear as per what I've just built. If I would like to add a video request, which is a feature we have just finished building, you're able to add request video, but this will only work on the video devices and the other devices that create videos. So that's where we edit it, and it is also where we can delete it, and it will then disappear from our queue. So build an alert around what you think is useful, how important it is for the customer or the person getting the notification, or for the reports, etc., to be very generic or very specific. Now let's go to my profile as my distributor user, and every user has a notification section. And this has to be set up according to the needs. So we choose what priority we would like emails or SMSs to be delivered. So I'm going to choose emails for low, emails, maybe I'll make SMS for medium, and email and SMS for high. So if I have chosen by default none, when that alert triggers with my name in it, I will get no notification. So especially if, obviously, if I'm not on the platform and I'm expecting an email, I will get nothing. If I'm expecting an SMS, likewise. But if I go in and we've created a high alert and I say email, what will happen now is that email will be sent to me when that alert triggers. How do we set up emails and SMS gateways? Simply put, in administration, we go up to the vendor level and we look under the settings of our vendor, and here under there are our email settings. By default, they are disabled. Once they're enabled, I can create my own name, my from name, my from address, and the details of my email server. If I do not do this, if you do not do this, the emails will generate and come from us. No reply at kt01.net. So if you don't set this up, there's a default, but if you do set it up, you can create a from address like this, no reply at anything.com, or no reply at customer A, vendor A, whatever the case is. Once that's working, the emails will come through to the client, no problem. In terms of SMS gateways, you can add an SMS gateway at a vendor level. We've got a Clickatel gateway, and it's a case of getting a Clickatel account, for example, getting an API ID, entering your username and password, and then SMSs will then generate. We have, by default, integrated certain of them. We recommend Bulk SMS and Clickatel, and these generate without any problems, very easy to set up. And as you can see, you give it a name and you follow the steps and you can build it there. You can also build an SMS gateway at a client. So if you want a specific client only to receive SMSs, you would build the SMS gateway at the client level. If you want all your clients to receive SMSs, you build them at the vendor level. So emails will generate even if you don't have an email server. SMSs will not generate unless there is an SMS gateway added to the platform. The alerts will still trigger no matter what, whether you've got SMSs, whether you've set up an email server or not, it doesn't matter. The alerts will still trigger. The notifications will be the issue. So lastly, on this particular issue, how do we report on alerts? Well, what we've done is we've grouped all of the alert reports under the section alerts, and you can see how these are generated. So the first one, you can go in and choose the event you would like to report on and see which of the alerts have triggered based on that event. Alternately, you can go in and run a report on individual alerts. So we can go in and choose an individual alert, run it over the time frame for the assets involved. And in this particular one, the listing report, you will see you can also have the comments and acknowledgements made during the time frame in question. So this is useful, especially useful if you're running a control room or have staff monitoring alerts. If you don't, well, it's a simple case of removing those from the alert report, and you could then say, okay, this is the report that's useful to me, and save it as a template. So you can, as we've discussed in previous webinars, customize these reports. But the bottom line is you can now choose more than one report alert, or you can have one alert depending on the type of report you're looking for. You can run these manually, and you can schedule these to go out regularly. If you find a nice report with, if you don't want the acknowledgements because nobody is acknowledging and they're always blank, save it as a template, run it manually, send it out on a scheduled basis as well. Then we have the analytics tool. And the analytics tool allows you to run an analytics report, same as the other alert listing report. We can choose a specific alert, or we can choose more than one alert. Now I'm going to show you a little trick on the analytics, which is quite nice. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to add back. So what we can do is on the actual analytics report, we're able to choose the asset versus the time. That's the default. But if I choose more than one alert, I can change the column to the alert. And what I will now be able to do is filter down on and see each alert individually rather than the time frame or the days. So instead of grouping the alerts, when I do this, I'm able to filter down onto the alerts. So I'm able to then see which vehicle is triggering which alerts over the time frame I've chosen. Alternatively, I can do time, then I will group all of these, and then you can run one at a time if you would like. And then when you filter the data, you will be able to then go down to the day level and see how many alerts are triggering per day. So we pre-run some of these as an example, and there's the analytics, the alert analytics. And what I did was renamed the column alert count to speeding above 90. And I've got the time and the asset. And you can see I filtered this, and now you can see how many alerts are triggering per day. Or if I then do the roll up, I can see which of my vehicles are triggering the alerts. So now I've got the vehicle by alert, and the other way I had the days and the alerts. So there's a whole power in the reporting system we've gone through in the webinar section before, the analytics section we've gone through before. So these are useful to pull the data out of the alert section and give you insight as to what's happening in the particular client.